Ladies and gentlemen, permit me, before I begin, to just say thank you for your warm hospitality. I cannot tell you just how warm my invitation has been so far. From coming on the plane to all the dogs that surrounded me. It's the first time I ever seen much dog on one plane. And it was a wonderful experience. To just coming to St. Kitts, and I would have to say that this is my first time to St. Kitts because the first time I came, I stayed on the plane. And the welcoming committee has been truly spectacular, and I want to just say, Dr. Douglas, thank you. I represent a constituency that is largely rural, and we have a lot of farmers in my constituency. And like everything else, it is the largest geographical constituency in Jamaica. And typically, to traverse one side to the other takes me maybe an hour and a half because of the mountain range. So one Sunday, I was invited up in the hills of St. Anne to a small church, and it was pouring rain. And it's a kind of rain that if you stand up outside, you can't see in front of your hand. So we went to church. And when we got to church, it was just me and one of our farmers, Master Joe. So anyway, the pastor said, well, since it's only the two of you, make we have a little service. You know, one or two are gathered. The Lord is there. Right, Canon? Self-love, community love, God love. So we went inside. And the pastor proceeded to go from Genesis to Revelation. And poor Master Joe started to get uneasy and started to walk up and down. And then started to head to the door. So the pastor gave the benediction very quickly, ran to the door and said, so Wanton, I thought you said you want to come to church. Him say, yeah. But if you have one fowl, and a big bag of feed. You're going to get a fowl the whole bag of feed one time? You can't feed the one fowl the entire bag one time. It will kill him. So I say that to tell you that I am not going to be up here for a very long time this evening, feeding you because you have been fed. But I want to speak to you on some very crucial issues that I think are important, not only to ourselves as individuals, as Caribbean nationals, but certainly to our individual countries. And permit me, before I do, just to establish the protocol of my wonderful, hospitable, charming, handsome host, the Honorable, Right Excellent Dr. Denzel Douglas. Prime Minister yesterday, Prime Minister today, and Prime Minister tomorrow. And I tell him I'll come and help him. Members of Parliament, members of the executive of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, Sir Edmund Lawrence and Lady Lawrence, ambassadors, members of the Consular and Diplomatic Corps, our Bono Nunes, where she gone? First female Calypsonian queen, where's Miss Willett? And she was talking to me of such wonderful things. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Yes, I am a politician. And sometimes people look at me, and especially in immigration, and ask what I do. And I say I'm an elected official, I'm a politician, and they stamp me very quickly and tell me to get out the line. I'm not quite sure if it means that they like me or they just don't want to deal with me. But life has taught me that courage has no limits. It might be perceived as stubborn or unreasonable, and could even mean that you stand alone on principle. Courage can create the perception that you're choosing battles unwisely, choosing some battles that could adversely affect not only your immediate, but your long-term future. But courage has a responsibility. And it has a responsibility to the future to take a stand. Taking a stand means that you really ought to be fearless in the face of any adversity and act in our children's long-term future, because after all, they are our future generation of power. Courage is individual, but it can also drive people's collective consciousness, and it can also imbue a country with national courage and a nation with regional courage. So, size has really never hampered us. As a region, we have a proud history of promoting respect, self-determination, and tolerance of different economic and political systems. Who we are as member states of CARICOM, regardless of how small or how wealthy we are, has never prevented us from taking a stand on anything. Our ability to stand tall, think big, and unleash our feisty and unabashed certainty that regardless of who it is, we always know the answer, even in the face of great opposition. You just have to book up a Caribbean national on a flight, and you can figure it out. Worse if them tell you, say, you're back overweight, and you want to come home. Our regional courage has never been in question, and has and should be allowed to force each of us to recognize our courage's responsibility to the future will always translate into CARICOM's best interest. Given the extraordinary disruptions currently taking place geopolitically, cowering in the face of bullies is not courage, and it will not take us forward. We must never allow our pride, our self-respect, or our people's strong identity and integrity as a people of this great region to retreat from taking decisions on principle, and we must never allow that to be bludgeoned into acquiescence. We must never allow veiled or unveiled perceived threats to push us to corners that we cannot get out of. Retreating from taking decisions on principle must never be our preferred option as Caribbean nationals. In the absence of any public explanation for the sudden turn of face, my country took a recent vote at the United Nations on Jerusalem, and it can be taken only as a retreat from principle, a retreat from courage. Abstention, whether verbally or physically, cannot be the basis on sound, strategic, or principled regional foreign policy direction. As a region, we've always led and shown assertive, courageous, and enlightened leadership in our foreign policy and diplomacy. The Right Excellent Norman Manley, even before Jamaica was independent, stood up in the face of a number of different atrocities and said we would not trade with South Africa, an apartheid South Africa. We were the first country in this part of the world to do it, and we were not independent. Since then, the policies of my administration, the fraternal administration and party of your party, has been founded on principles of non-alliance, respect for all the sovereignty of nations, and respect of human rights and citizens, no matter where you come from, where you live, what country, or how much money you have. When it was detrimental to stand up for Cuba and China, our region did it. And Michael Manley showed unrelenting support and led a united front with Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Barbados to establish diplomatic relations with Cuba in 1972. We were the first, again, as a region to do it in the Western Hemisphere. We did the same with China. Now, China's aggressive global growth strategy has resulted in China being Jamaica's main source of bilateral loans and foreign direct investment. And one could argue that it also prompted the celebrated visit to Jamaica by President Barack Obama in 2015, the first time a US president has since Ronald Reagan came 35 years ago. Now, I want you to listen to me keenly, because that visit was undoubtedly a product of Jamaica's courageous stand on foreign policy issues, such as relations with Cuba, Venezuela, and China. which sent an unmistakable message to Washington that little Jamaica was strategically crucial to the US interests and needed to be courted, not threatened. It was a sign of the times, a confirmation that the basis upon which China and the US deploys its capital and the political might that is it sometimes changing, especially since the US holds more Chinese debt today. It is clear that the Chinese and the China Silk and Belt Road Initiative has the potential to increase China's dominance in the Asian Pacific and quietly turn the global axis of trade dominance towards China. In the meantime, the United States' response to a changing world reality appears isolationist, protectionist, and inward-looking. What is interesting is that the United States in 2017-2018, bullyism trumps diplomacy, and friendship and exclusion trumps inclusion. These policies can only assist China's increased geopolitical influence in global politics and reduce that of the United States. Is that the bandwagon that the CARICOM countries want to face? And I ask this question because what happened at the UN recently has torn me to my core. Because I'm sitting in this room with people whom many generations were a part of regional activism, which allow me to stand on this stage as a courageous, confident young woman in politics. The current United States President's deliberate pronouncement that climate change is a man-made phenomenon has serious implications for small island developing states in CARICOM. Climate change is real and potentially destructive, and a destructive issue for all of us who call the Caribbean our home. And we must tackle it with courage and realism. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us could face a total annihilation of our economies if we don't tackle this fight. I know the extensive work that Dr. Denzel Douglas and his administration did to protect the coastlines, not only of St. Kitts, but I remember very strategically when I chaired UNESCO and the resolutions that were moved at the UNESCO by the ambassador for St. Kitts and Nevis looking at climate change for small island developing states, and we supported it. And we must not stop supporting those kinds of issues. They say he who feels it knows it, and rain don't fall upon one man's house. We've felt the back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes, and this is now a reality for this region. Prime Minister Skerritt's emotional pronouncements last year at the UN should serve as a chilling reminder to urgently brace for this year. Not because it didn't hit Jamaica. We felt ravaged by what we saw in terms of the Eastern Caribbean. When it hits one, it hits all of us. In this fight, we must not only survive, but we must prevail. There's no other option. We cannot afford to get wiped out. You see, one of the things that concerns me dearly, not only about my own country, but it is the fact that we have to speak as one voice if we are going to remain globally relevant as countries and as a region. And so we have to have the courage to do that. We have to have the courage to speak as one voice. We have to press for the removal of the obsolete and failed US embargo against Cuba, which has deprived our region and so many other countries the ability to trade with Cuba. We must have the courage and speak as one voice to bend the reluctance of many of the international lending agencies that will not give us the lower interest concessionary rates to borrow money, especially in the aftermath of a hurricane. It cannot be that in this century, people looking at the quality of life only look at the GDP per capita of a country to determine whether or not they're going to give us lower interest rates to help our people. It's wrong. And CARICOM has to stand up as one voice and say that it is wrong. We must have the courage to bet on each other and take the risk on each other. Let's take a bet on CARICOM. We've said it and we keep saying it, but we must have the conviction, the determination, the confidence to say to the world that when you touch one, you touch all. And so if you mess with one, you mess with all. So what it means is that you can't go into a vote and some people vote for, some abstain, and some just don't show up. Not calling any names. The world has changed a lot since our respective independence. And if we are to realistically and individually as nations remain relevant and not marginalized, then we have to come together. When Hussein is running, it's not only Jamaicans that cheer for Hussein. When Kirani is running, it's not only Grenadians cheering for him. Right? When reggae music playing, when soca is playing, we feel good. The University of the West Indies, I have friends from across the region. But there's more that have to unite us today going forward. It can't only be about institutions and sports. It has to be a common conviction at the leadership levels that we have to speak as one voice. But we have to have the courage to do it. And so let the world not only see that our beaches and our music, but see the spirit of courage, that when we stand up, we are prepared to have the courage to say we are right, and we're prepared to say that we're going to stand on principle and not because you are mighty or powerful that we're going to cower in a corner against your bullyism. Many of you in this room were a part of a generation that gave the world true examples of regional activism. And you did it with stepping out with your Caribbean brothers and sisters. What will my child or your child take away from this generation of leadership? Abstention cannot be an option. We have to show them that we're prepared to show up, stand on the front line, and have courage to make them relevant going into their adulthood. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish you all the best. I want to say to you, long live the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party. I want to say to all the workers and the warriors who stand up on election day and before election day to work in elections, that not only do I see the courage in your fight, but I know what you go through, especially on election day, when you have some persons who might feel there might be other mechanisms that they'd like to use to thwart your success. You are the true warriors. And whatever it takes for us to get back the leadership in St. Kitts and Nevis, I stand ready to help you in that fight. Thank you for inviting me. And the struggle continues as we all face leadership. Thank you.